The human fleet appeared at the edge of Alteria Prime's star system just as the massive Davac armada began their final attack. What should have been an easy victory for the Davac suddenly became something they had never experienced before. They were facing human military tactics with no rules and no mercy. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching thousands of enemy ships spread across space like a dark cloud. For weeks, these ships had been unstoppable. They had converted world after world, turning entire populations into mindless slaves. Now they were about to learn why they had been so afraid of humans in the first place. "Maya, are all experimental weapons ready?" Jake asked. "All systems ready, sir. The Davac won't know what hit them." Maya Rodriguez's fingers moved quickly across her control panels. "Quantum disruption torpedoes are loaded. Adaptive shield frequencies are set. And the Liberation broadcast is prepared for transmission." Admiral Helen Cross's voice came through the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Cross. Execute pattern Omega. Show them what unpredictable really means." The human fleet moved like nothing the Davac had ever seen. Instead of forming straight battle lines like every other enemy they had fought, the human ships scattered in all directions. Each vessel followed what looked like random patterns, but together they created perfect tactical coordination. The Davac fleet commanders tried to respond, but their programming was built for conventional warfare. They expected enemies to fight in predictable formations using standard weapons. The human attack made no sense according to everything they knew about military strategy. Dr. Lisa Chen monitored enemy communications from her science station. "Jake, they're confused. Their command protocols can't adapt fast enough to our changing formations." Commander Ryan Burke highlighted tactical information on his displays. "Their converted council ships are trying to help them, but those ships are still following council military doctrine. It's like watching someone fight with their hands tied behind their back." Maya's weapon systems locked onto the primary Davac command ships. "Quantum torpedoes ready for firing. The frequency modulators I've been developing should punch right through their shield systems. Fire all weapons." Space around Alteria Prime lit up with explosions as human weapons found their targets with deadly accuracy. Davac ships that had seemed invincible suddenly found their shields failing, their weapon systems overloading, their command structures disrupted by precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses. But Jake's real masterstroke wasn't the advanced technology. It was the psychological warfare. "Lisa, activate the Liberation Protocol now." Dr. Chen smiled grimly and began broadcasting on all Davac communication frequencies. The message was simple but devastating. It was a complete breakdown of Davac mind control technology, transmitted in the languages of every species they had enslaved. Suddenly, converted populations across dozens of worlds began to remember who they had been before the Davac changed them. "The Davac Empire depends on converted infrastructure and slave labor," Jake explained to the council representatives who were watching from their emergency bunkers. "Take away their ability to control those populations, and their entire supply chain collapses." Across the Davac fleet, chaos erupted as converted worlds began to rebel. Ships that had been part of the invasion force suddenly found themselves cut off from reinforcements. Their crews started questioning orders. Converted personnel began remembering their original loyalties and fighting back against their Davac masters. Maya watched her instruments with satisfaction. "Sir, the Liberation broadcast is working better than I hoped. We're getting reports of uprisings on every converted world. The Davac are losing control of their slave populations." Ryan tracked enemy fleet movements. "The Davac commanders are trying to maintain formation, but half their ships are dealing with internal revolts. Their converted crews are turning against them." Lisa analyzed the psychological impact. "Jake, this is brilliant. The Davac built their entire military strategy around controlling other species. Now those same species are remembering what freedom feels like." Within 6 hours, the Davac retreat had begun. Ships that had been moving toward Alteria Prime were now turning around and rushing back to their converted worlds to deal with rebellions. The massive invasion fleet was falling apart as panic spread through their ranks. Ambassador Keth Val appeared on Jake's communication screen, his 4 eyes wide with amazement. "Captain, this is incredible. How did you know their weakness?" "We didn't know," Jake replied simply. "That's what unpredictable means, Ambassador. We adapted to the situation and found a solution that nobody expected." Maya looked up from her engineering station. "Sir, the Davac are broadcasting a general retreat from all Council space. It looks like they're heading back toward their home territory as fast as they can travel." Ryan nodded with satisfaction. Without their converted infrastructure, they can't sustain military operations this far from their own worlds. They're running out of supplies and reinforcements. Dr. Chen was analyzing the long-term implications. They'll be back eventually, but not for years, maybe decades. They need time to develop new strategies for dealing with enemies who can adapt and change tactics. Jake turned to the Council communication channel. "Ambassador, I believe this concludes our military assistance." "Wait," Kethaval said quickly. "The Council wishes to discuss terms for your permanent return to our alliance." "Terms?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Full membership restoration with no conditions. Increased resource allocation for human worlds. Official recognition of human tactical superiority in all defense matters. Command authority for humans in any future military crisis." Jake considered this carefully. "And the next time someone finds our unpredictability inconvenient?" Kethval's 4 eyes met his steadily. "I believe the Council has learned the true value of controlled chaos." Maya laughed. "Controlled chaos. I like that description." Commander Burke pulled up strategic assessments. "The galaxy is definitely safer with humans in it, sir. Even our enemies understand that now," Dr. Chen added. "And our allies won't forget what happens when they try to fight a war without us." Jake nodded slowly. "Very well, Ambassador, but this time, we negotiate all the terms, every single detail." As the human fleet began working with grateful Council forces to secure Alteria Prime and help liberated worlds, Jake reflected on the lessons everyone had learned. Predictability was safe and comfortable, but safety without strength was just another word for being vulnerable. Humanity had left without a fight when the Council asked them to go, but when the real fight came anyway, they had returned with interest. The humans had not only saved their former allies, they had freed entire worlds full of people who had been enslaved by the Davac. The Council would never make the mistake of dismissing human unpredictability again. Across the galaxy, potential enemies had just learned why the Davac Empire had been so terrified of humanity in the first place. Maya was already working on improvements to their liberation technology. "Sir, I think we can modify this system to work against other forms of mind control. If there are more species out there using similar tactics, we'll be ready for them." Ryan was reviewing battle reports. "The other galactic powers are sending congratulations and requests for military cooperation agreements. Everyone wants to be on our side now." Lisa smiled as she read intelligence reports. "The Davac Empire is dealing with rebellions on hundreds of worlds. It's going to take them years just to restore basic order to their territory." Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about the future. Sometimes, the most predictable thing about humans was that they would always find a way to be unpredictable when it mattered most. That unpredictability had just saved the galaxy from slavery. The Council had learned their lesson. The Davac had learned their lesson. And every other civilization watching had learned that humanity was not a species you wanted as an enemy. Most importantly, they had all learned that real peace came not from avoiding conflict, but from being too dangerous to attack in the first place. 1 year had passed since humanity left the Council. The galaxy was breaking apart faster than anyone had predicted. War had come to the Helix Nebula, and it was spreading like a disease through civilized space. The Zalani Confederation and the Torthan Republic had been arguing about mining rights for 3 months. Under human mediation, such disputes never lasted more than 2 weeks. Former diplomatic attaché Kate Johnson had resolved 17 similar conflicts during her tenure. Her replacement, Centauri bureaucrat Vel Terran, had no idea how to handle aggressive negotiation tactics. The Torthan delegation refuses to accept our mining survey data, Veltarin reported to the Council emergency session. They claim our methods are biased and demand a complete restart of the negotiation process. Speaker Zethkar felt a headache building behind his eyes. What would Kate Johnson have done in this situation? I do not know, sir. Her methods were never properly documented. She seemed to rely on intuitive understanding of species psychology. That was the problem. Kate had made diplomacy look easy because she understood how different species thought and reacted. She could predict what each side really wanted and find solutions that satisfied everyone. The Council had never studied her methods because they had never expected to need them. Now, 2 major powers were mobilizing their fleets over a dispute that should have been settled in committee rooms. The Zalani had declared the Helix Nebula a restricted zone. The Torthans had responded by sending military escorts with their mining ships. First contact had resulted in the destruction of 3 vessels and 47 casualties. Sir, both sides are requesting Council military intervention, reported Defense Coordinator Jacques Venn. The Zalani want us to enforce their mining claims. The Torthans want us to protect their ships from Zalani aggression. Zethkar stared at the tactical display showing fleet movements throughout the disputed region. Red icons marked hostile forces. Yellow icons showed neutral shipping that was fleeing the area. Blue icons represented Council forces, and there were far too few of them. Deploy the Third Fleet to establish a neutral zone between the opposing forces. The order went out immediately. Admiral Korthvin received his instructions and began moving his ships into position. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming any academies survived what was coming. Admiral Rick Peterson had spent 10 years training Council fleet commanders in proper engagement protocols. His reports filled an entire database with detailed analysis of fleet tactics, threat assessment, and de-escalation procedures. The alien commanders had attended his lectures, but had never truly understood his teachings. Admiral Korthvin followed standard Council procedures exactly. He positioned his ships in a defensive formation between the 2 hostile fleets and broadcast standard warnings about unauthorized military activity in Council space. Then he waited for both sides to acknowledge Council authority and withdraw. Tut-day. Zalani and Torthan commanders looked at the Council fleet and made rapid calculations. Korthvin had 37 ships. The Zalani had 62 ships. The Torthans had 58 ships. Both sides realized they could destroy the Council force and continue their conflict without interference. The Battle of Helix Station lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the Council Third Fleet had been completely destroyed. Admiral Korthvin died on his flagship bridge, still trying to establish communication with enemy commanders who had stopped listening hours earlier. News of the disaster reached Zerion Prime within 6 hours. Speaker Zethkar called an emergency session of the full council. Representatives from 200 species gathered to discuss their response to the greatest military defeat in council history. We must mobilize all available forces, declared Military Advisor Hexvin. Both the Zalani and Torthans must be brought to justice for this unprovoked attack on council forces. Unprovoked? Admiral Genkoth of the Altarian Federation stood up slowly. We sent 1 fleet to stop 2 fleets. What did we expect would happen? The debate continued for hours. Some representatives demanded immediate military action. Others called for economic sanctions. A few suggested diplomatic protests. None of them seemed to understand that they no longer had the military strength to enforce any of their decisions. The human-designed early warning systems had been offline for months. Dr. Helen Garcia's threat assessment networks could have predicted the Helix Nebula conflict weeks before it started. Her replacement had been working from incomplete data and outdated analysis methods. "Sir, we are receiving reports of military buildup in the Vega sector," reported intelligence analyst Morkek. "It appears that several species are mobilizing their home defense fleets." Zethkar felt cold dread in his stomach. "Which species?" "The Arcturians, Rigelians, Procyonites, and Altarians, sir. All have withdrawn their forces from Council command structure and are establishing independent defense perimeters." The Council was not just facing two rebellious members. They were facing the complete breakdown of their military alliance. Species that had trusted Council protection for centuries were deciding to defend themselves. The Altarian withdrawal was particularly painful. They had been humanity's closest allies and had learned human military tactics better than any other species. Admiral Frank Miller had trained their officers personally before the human departure. "Contact Admiral Jen Koth immediately," ordered Zethkar. "Remind her of her obligations under the Mutual Defense Treaty." The response came back within an hour. "The Altarian Federation recognizes its treaty obligations. However, recent events have demonstrated that the Council Military Command is no longer competent to provide adequate defense for our territory. We are exercising our right to independent action under Article 15 of the treaty." Article 15 had been written by human lawyers 2 decades earlier. It allowed member species to withdraw from Council Military Command if they determined that Council leadership posed a threat to their security. The humans had insisted on including this clause over strong alien objections. Now, the aliens understood why the humans had wanted that escape route. They had foreseen this exact situation. The medical crisis was also accelerating beyond control. The viral outbreak that Dr. Helen Garcia had been tracking was now spreading through 12 star systems. Without human-developed treatments, the death toll was climbing rapidly. Dr. Velthak of the Centauri Medical Council had tried everything she could think of. Traditional alien medicines were useless against the new virus. Attempts to reverse engineer human treatments had failed completely. The aliens simply did not understand human biochemistry well enough to reproduce their work. "Sir, the Rigelian colonies are reporting 40,000 casualties in the past week," reported medical coordinator. "Yektal, their hospitals are overcrowded and running out of supplies." "What about the emergency medical supplies we requisitioned from the Vegan manufacturers?" "The supplies are available, sir, but we have no way to transport them. All shipping routes to the Rigel system passed through the combat zone around the Helix Nebula. The war was making every other crisis worse. Trade routes that had operated safely for decades were now too dangerous for civilian traffic. Medical supplies, food shipments, and emergency equipment sat in warehouses while people died waiting for deliveries that might never come. Engineer Steve Martinez had designed redundant shipping routes specifically to prevent this kind of systemic failure. His logistics networks had backup routes and emergency protocols that could handle almost any crisis. But those systems required human oversight to function properly. The alien transport coordinators had tried to activate the emergency protocols, but they could not understand how the human systems worked. The backup routes existed on paper, but no one knew how to implement them. "Sir, we have identified 17 alternate shipping routes to the affected systems," reported Transport Coordinator Velcon. "However, the navigation computers cannot calculate the jump sequences required." "Why not? We have the route data." "The routes were designed for human navigation systems, sir. Our computers use different calculation methods. The margin of error is too high for safe hyperspace travel." Captain Tony Garcia had tried to teach alien navigators about human jump calculation methods. His training programs were available in the Council archives, but learning to navigate like humans required years of practice and a different way of thinking about space-time mathematics. The aliens were discovering that human technology was not just more advanced, it was fundamentally different in ways they had never appreciated. Human engineers thought about problems differently. Human scientists approached research differently. Human military commanders understood strategy differently. All of that knowledge was now locked away in human space, unavailable to the species that needed it most. The economic collapse continued to accelerate. Without human financial institutions, credit markets were seizing up across the galaxy. Companies that had operated profitably for centuries were suddenly facing bankruptcy. The Clixian Merchant Guild was the first major commercial organization to collapse completely. Guild leader Fixtel had borrowed heavily against expected profits from human trade routes. When those routes disappeared, his organization could not service its debts. "Sir, we are receiving reports of commercial failures in 17 sectors," reported economic analyst Kex 2 years after humanity's departure. Speaker Zethkar stood at the viewport of his personal transport ship, watching Earth grow larger on the display. He had never imagined he would come here as a beggar. The council delegation included representatives from 50 species, all hoping to convince the humans to return. The journey to Sol system had been a nightmare. 3 different pirate groups had attacked their convoy. Without human escort ships, they had lost 2 vessels and 37 crew members. The remaining ships had barely made it to human space. "Sir, Earth Defense Control is requesting our business here," reported Communications Officer Veltine. Zethkar straightened his ceremonial robes. "Tell them we request audience with the Human Commonwealth leadership. Full diplomatic protocols." The response came back immediately. "Permission granted. You are cleared to dock at Orbital Station 7. Defense escorts will guide you in." What Zethkar saw next shocked him more than anything in his long political career. The orbital space around Earth was filled with massive construction projects. Hundreds of ships moved in perfect coordination. New space stations were being built at incredible speed. The humans had been busy during their 2 years of isolation. Captain Bill Warner of the escort destroyer Earth's Guardian contacted them directly. "Council delegation, please maintain course and speed. Any deviation from approved flight path will result in immediate detention." The threat was delivered politely but firmly. These were not the patient humans who had served on council committees for 50 years. These humans had confidence and authority that came from success. Orbital Station 7 was bigger than anything the council had ever built. Its design was purely functional, with none of the decorative elements that aliens preferred. Everything about it spoke of efficiency and purpose. President Dan Roberts met them in a conference room that overlooked Earth's blue oceans. Defense. Secretary Amy Clark sat beside him, along with several other officials Zethkar did not recognize. The humans were polite but distant. "Speaker Zethkar, welcome to Earth," President Roberts said without standing. "I understand you have urgent business to discuss." Zethkar had prepared a long speech about mutual cooperation and shared interests. Looking at the calm faces across the table, he decided to abandon diplomacy and speak plainly. "Mr. President, the Council needs your help. We were wrong to ignore your concerns. We were wrong to dismiss your contributions. We are asking you to return." "Return to what?" asked Defense Secretary Clark. "The Council that voted to cut our research budgets, the Council that ignored our security warnings, the Council that let 3,000 humans die on Kepler while committees debated proper procedures." Ambassador Ray Cooper, humanity's former representative to the Torthan Republic, entered the room carrying a thick folder. "Speaker Zethkar, before we discuss anything else, you need to understand what you actually lost when we left." Ray opened the folder and spread documents across the table. Charts, graphs, and data sheets covered every surface. "This is a complete analysis of human contributions to Council space during our 50 years of membership." The numbers were devastating. Humans had provided 87% of all successful diplomatic resolutions. Human ships had carried 43% of all galactic trade. Human researchers had developed 62% of all medical advances used in Council space. "This cannot be accurate," protested Council Economic Advisor Hexnall. "Humans were only 3% of our membership." 3% of your membership, Ray agreed. "But we were the 3% that actually solved problems instead of talking about them." Defense Secretary Clark activated a holographic display showing current galactic conditions. Red zones marked areas of active conflict. Yellow zones showed regions with economic or medical crises. Green zones indicated stable territory. Council space is 93% red or yellow zones, she said calmly. Human Commonwealth space is 97% green zones. The difference is not accidental. President Roberts leaned forward. Speaker Zethkar, do you know why we left without warning you? You were angry about the Kepler incident. No. We were disappointed. Anger implies we expected better from you. We had learned not to expect anything. The president stood and walked to the viewport. We spent 50 years trying to teach you how to govern effectively. You ignored every lesson. We tried to show you how to prevent crises. You waited for crises to happen and then blamed us when we could not fix them instantly. Admiral Kate Wilson entered the room and saluted the president. Sir, the delegation's escort ships have been asking questions about our defensive capabilities. What kind of questions? Fleet strength, weapons technology, patrol patterns, standard intelligence gathering. President Roberts turned back to the council delegation. Even now, while asking for our help, you are trying to figure out how to control us again. Zethkar felt heat rise in his face. We need to assess the current balance of power. The balance of power is simple, said Defense Secretary Clark. We do not need you. You need us. That is why you came here. Trade Coordinator Lisa Brown joined the meeting with her own set of reports. Speaker Zethkar, are you familiar with current economic conditions in the Human Commonwealth? We know you have established trade relationships with former council members. 16 species have applied to join the Human Commonwealth. 7 have been accepted. Their economies have improved by an average of 34% within 6 months of joining us. Lisa activated another display showing trade volume statistics. Meanwhile, council space trade has decreased by 59%. Corporate failures are up 200%. Unemployment has reached levels not seen in over a century. How is this possible? Asked Economic Advisor Hexnail. You cannot create prosperity from nothing. We did not create it from nothing, Lisa replied. We created it by eliminating inefficiency. Our member species follow streamlined regulations designed to promote economic growth. Council regulations were designed to promote bureaucratic job security. Dr. Julie Adams, the Commonwealth's Chief Medical Officer, presented the health statistics. Council space is currently experiencing 4 major disease outbreaks. 2 are preventable diseases that we had under control before our departure. The other 2 are new viral strains that our early warning systems would have detected months ago. How many casualties? Asked Zethkar quietly. Current estimates suggest over 2 million deaths that could have been prevented with proper medical infrastructure. The room fell silent. 2 million lives lost because the council had been too proud to admit they needed human expertise. Commander Tony Garcia, now Director of Commonwealth Defense Forces, delivered the military assessment. Council naval forces have suffered 73% casualties in the past 18 months. The Helix Nebula conflict has spread to 12 star systems. Pirate activity has increased by 400%. Our defense contractors estimate it would take the Council 15 years to rebuild effective military capabilities using your current industrial methods. By then, there may not be a Council left to defend. President Roberts returned to his seat. Speaker Zethkar, we understand your situation. The question is, what are you prepared to do about it? What do you mean? The old system failed because it was designed to fail. Committee governance does not work. Consensus building does not work. Bureaucratic procedures do not work. You cannot fix your problems by doing the same things that created them. Defense Secretary Clark opened another folder. These are the conditions for Human Commonwealth membership. Full adoption of our governmental structure. Complete integration of your military forces under our command. Acceptance of our economic regulations and trade policies. Zethkar stared at the documents. You are asking us to surrender our sovereignty. We are offering you survival, President Roberts said bluntly. Your current path leads to complete societal collapse within 5 years. Our projections are very precise. What if we refuse? Then you refuse. We will continue developing our own territories and protecting our own interests. The choice is yours. Admiral Kate Wilson received a message on her personal communicator. Sir, the Altarian Federation has formally requested full membership in the Commonwealth. Their entire government structure is prepared to undergo reorganization according to our requirements. President Roberts nodded. Approve their application. Begin integration procedures immediately. He looked back at the Council delegation. The Altarians understand reality. Their decision to ally with us 2 years ago has protected them from the chaos affecting the rest of Council space. Now they want full protection. You are destroying the galactic order that has existed for centuries, protested Cultural Advisor Yelkoth. The galactic order destroyed itself, Amy Clark replied. We are building something better from the pieces. Dr. Ben Foster, Commonwealth Technology Director, joined the meeting with final statistics. Speaker Zeth Carr, our research productivity has increased by 240% since leaving the Council. Without bureaucratic interference, our scientists can focus on actual scientific work. We have developed new medical treatments, improved space travel technology, and advanced manufacturing technique. The humans had not sought military dominance. They had achieved it by building effective institutions while their competitors built bureaucracies. Ambassador Ray Cooper now served as Commonwealth representative to the remaining Council governments. His job was to manage the transition as more species abandoned the failing Council system. Mr. Ambassador, the Andromedan Union has submitted a formal application for Commonwealth membership, his aide, Deputy Ambassador Lisa Chang, informed him. They are willing to accept all standard conditions. Ray reviewed the application with professional satisfaction. The Andromedans had been among humanity's harshest critics during the early Council years. Now they were begging for human protection. Schedule. The integration meetings. Full transformation package. They understand this means complete governmental restructuring. 5 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The galaxy looked completely different now. Speaker Zeth Carr stood in what remained of the Council chambers on Xerion Prime, addressing an audience that was half the size it had been a decade ago. The Centauri Republic has formally requested admission to the Human Commonwealth, he announced to the scattered representatives. They are the 47th species to abandon Council membership for human protection. The irony was bitter, but undeniable. The species that had once complained about human influence now competed desperately for human attention. The Commonwealth had become the dominant power in the galaxy, not through conquest, but through simple competence. Admiral Beth Collins commanded the largest fleet in galactic history from her flagship, the Commonwealth Victory. Her ships patrolled trade routes that stretched across 200 star systems. Pirates had learned to avoid any area where human vessels might appear. Admiral, we have reports of Thrakari raiders in the Vega sector, reported her aide, Captain Nancy Davis. The local defense forces are requesting assistance. Dispatch the 7th Squadron, Beth ordered. Rules of engagement are standard. Disable if possible, destroy if necessary. The Thrakari had been the terror of the Outer Rim for decades. Their raids had killed millions of civilians while the Council debated proper response procedures. Under human command, such raids were stopped within hours of being detected. Captain Eric Johnson of the destroyer Commonwealth Eagle received his orders and jumped immediately to hyperspace. His ship was one of 50 vessels that could respond to any emergency within 6 hours. The old Council fleet had needed 3 days just to organize a response. The raiders never had a chance. Human ships were faster, better armed, and commanded by officers who understood real combat. The Thrakari vessels were either captured or destroyed within 20 minutes of first contact. Eagle to Commonwealth Command, Eric reported. All hostile vessels neutralized. Civilian casualties? 0. Requesting salvage and recovery teams. Beth smiled as she received the report. 5 years ago, the same raid would have resulted in thousands of deaths and weeks of diplomatic protests. Now it was handled as routine police work. The economic transformation had been even more dramatic. Trade Coordinator Mike Rodriguez oversaw commercial networks that generated more wealth than the entire council economy had ever produced. The secret was eliminating bureaucratic interference. "Sir, the quarterly trade reports are ready," his assistant, Linda Parker, informed him. Commonwealth commerce volume has increased by 312% over the past year. Mike reviewed the numbers with satisfaction. Human efficiency had created prosperity that benefited everyone willing to follow human economic principles. Member species that had struggled under council regulations now enjoyed unprecedented growth. The Altarian Federation was the perfect example. 5 years ago, they had been a minor power with a struggling economy. As the first species to join the Commonwealth completely, they had become one of the wealthiest civilizations in the galaxy. "The Altarians are requesting approval for another expansion of their shipbuilding facilities," Linda reported. "They want to increase production by 50%. "Approved. Their quality control meets our standards, and their delivery schedules are excellent." Under the council system, such expansion would have required months of environmental impact studies, cultural sensitivity reviews, and economic impact assessments. Under the Commonwealth system, good performance was rewarded with more opportunities. Dr. Rachel Wilson ran the Commonwealth Medical Research Center on Luna, where teams from dozens of species worked together without bureaucratic interference. Their breakthrough treatments had eliminated the diseases that were still killing millions in council space. "Dr. Wilson, the Rigelian government is requesting emergency medical assistance," reported her colleague, Dr. Kevin Wright. "They are offering to pay any price for access to our viral treatments." Rachel shook her head sadly. "Standard policy applies. Medical assistance is available only to Commonwealth members or approved allies. The Rigelians chose to remain with the Council. It seemed cruel, but the humans had learned that charity without commitment solved nothing. Species that wanted human help had to accept human leadership. There were no partial memberships or special arrangements. The few remaining council systems had become a cautionary tale of governmental failure. War was constant. Disease outbreaks killed millions. Economic collapse had reduced entire civilizations to subsistence levels. Yet many species still refused to admit they needed human guidance. President Dan Roberts, now in his second term as Commonwealth leader, received daily reports about council space deterioration. Each report confirmed the wisdom of humanity's original decision to leave. "Sir, intelligence reports indicate the council treasury will be completely empty within 6 months," Defense Secretary Amy Clark informed him during their weekly briefing. "Several member species are considering unilateral action to secure resources. Any requests for assistance?" Speaker Zethkar sent another message asking for emergency aid. No mention of political reform or Commonwealth membership. President Roberts had expected this. The aliens still believed they could get human help without changing their fundamental approach to governance. "They were wrong." Standard response. "We are happy to discuss Commonwealth membership applications. We do not provide aid to foreign governments." The Commonwealth had learned from council mistakes. Help without accountability created dependency. Accountability without commitment was meaningless. Only full integration produced lasting results. Commander Gary Foster patrolled the border between Commonwealth and Council space with his squadron of fast interceptors. His job was to prevent Council conflicts from spreading into Commonwealth territory. It was necessary work because Council space was constantly at war with itself. "Commander, we have refugees from the Tau Ceti system requesting sanctuary," reported his pilot, Lieutenant Kelly Adams. "Their homeworld is under attack by the Procyon Independence Movement." Gary checked his orders. Grant temporary sanctuary, standard refugee protocols. Inform them that permanent residence requires Commonwealth citizenship applications. The refugee situation had become a major issue. Millions of beings were fleeing Council space for the safety and prosperity of Commonwealth territory. The humans accepted refugees but required them to earn citizenship through useful contributions. Dr. Julie Thompson ran refugee processing centers that had become models of efficiency. Unlike Council refugee camps, which warehoused people indefinitely, Commonwealth centers focused on integration and employment. Dr. Thompson, we have 16,000 new arrivals this month, her administrator, Chris Martinez, reported. Mostly technical specialists and their families fleeing the Centauri Civil War. Process them according to standard procedures: skills assessment, health screening, cultural orientation, and job placement. Full integration within 90 days. The refugees often expressed amazement at how quickly they could rebuild their lives under human administration. The same process had taken years under Council bureaucracy. The technological gap between Commonwealth and Council space continued to widen. Research Director Dr. Paul Carter oversaw laboratories where alien and human scientists worked together, without the political interference that had crippled Council research. Dr. Carter, the new hyperspace navigation system is ready for fleet-wide deployment, announced his lead engineer, Dr. Sandra Lee. Travel times will be reduced by 40%. Excellent. Begin installation on all Commonwealth vessels immediately. Such rapid technological deployment would have been impossible under Council regulations. Every innovation would have required years of testing, committee review, and bureaucratic approval. By the time Council systems approved new technology, it was already obsolete. The military advantage was overwhelming. Admiral Tom Jackson commanded Commonwealth forces that could defeat any conceivable enemy through superior technology, training, and organization. His officers came from dozens of species, but all followed human military doctrine. Admiral, Council forces are massing near the Vega border, reported Intelligence Chief Colonel Maria Gonzalez. Their intentions are unclear, but the buildup suggests possible aggressive action. Tom studied the tactical displays without concern. Current threat assessment? Minimal, sir. Council forces lack the coordination and equipment for effective offensive operations. Their largest fleet could be neutralized by a single Commonwealth battle group.